Friends and followers of Bart Sabrow's Box Escape. Here is Alan Michael. He's the person I told you about in the introduction that has that encounter he wants to tell us about with Buzz Aldrin. Go ahead first. Tell us a little bit about your background and what do you do for a living, things like that.
Well, I'm a retired mortgage banker. About 10 years ago, I retired. I'm 60 years old. I developed tinnitus or tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. It's actually in the brain. And the doctors told me to slow down. So I got rid of the company and kept my stress level down. But that was my expertise. For 30 years, I ran a company and I was very good at it, ranked in the country, top 100 in the country 3 years in a row. The name of the company was Prime Funding, and I'm really proud of that. Except it had to go because it was keeping me sick. So I'm better now. I still have it, unfortunately, but I found a way to cope and to deal with it.
Okay. And so you're still working as an accountant?
No, no, I try to keep busy by driving people to and from the airport, believe it or not.
Oh,
So
okay.
it keeps me busy and it's fun. And I'm swamped. I mean, I'm getting calls every day, and I have a little ad in the paper, and people love me. So, and I tell my story. I tell them about what's going on in my life. And but and we'll talk more about me. But I really want to let you know that this what I'm about to tell you, I have never divulged to anyone. I never went to the media. I never went to magazines. I never went to newspapers. Never received compensation. Never sold my story. So this is an exclusive. So basically, it starts in 1985 when I was 22 years old. And a friend of mine, his name is Glenn, he had a business called At Your Service. And basically, what it was is it was a high level chauffeur, not a chauffeur, but a butler, a server with tuxedo and everything. So it was him and I. There could have been someone else, I don't remember, but a bunch of us went to Bel Air, where the late Joan Rivers lived, with her late husband, Edgar, and her daughter, who's alive today, Melissa. So the party was a winter party. So it was uh, the winter of 1985, or could have bled into the January or February of 86, but it was in that time period. And it was definitely the winter. It was very cold out. So I walked into Joan Rivers' house, Glenn and I fully dressed. We were there to work. I mean, we didn't know anybody there, but I saw him. Okay. This is a guy that was my hero because when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. And when I looked at him, he looked at me. We made eye contact. He was wearing a tuxedo. He must have been 50 at the time. This was 40 years ago. Guy's probably 90 now. I don't know. So the first thing I said to break the ice, because I wanted to break the ice with this guy, I said, "So have you spoken to Wayne lately?" And Wayne I'm not sure if he's still alive. Wayne Warga was a editor or journalist for the LA Times who helped co-wrote the book Return to Earth, which is a book that Buzz co-authored with Wayne. So he looked at me and he said, do you know Wayne? And I said, no, I only know him through the book. And he nodded his head. So that was the icebreaker. So of course we were there to work. So that's what I did. I served, and he got hammered, real hammered, because he's a drinker, as you know. I mean, I think once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. But he was hammered. And toward the end of the night, we didn't really have words during the dinner, the party. But toward the end of the night, I knew the night was getting to a close. I had to make my way in to talk further. So I leaned over to him, and there was a pillar. I remember a white pillar like those Roman Greek pillars that you see in houses. These were pillars that were inside her house. And we got close to each other. He leaned over, and with a very, very soft spoken voice, almost as if he didn't want to be heard, he says, "We never went there." Now, when he said that, it went right over my head. I had no idea what he was talking about. I was so naive at 22, lived a very charmed life, very protected, very sheltered. didn't know what to make of that. So I just laughed and smiled, and he continued to take the champagne that I was serving on the silver platter. So it didn't make the connection to me until about 30 years later. 2014, 2015 is when I woke up. And when I mean wake up, I mean when I really woke up and realized the world that we're living in, that we've been lied to, we've been deceived about most everything. And that's when I made the connection. And I said to myself, he was telling the truth. Very, very similar to what Neil Armstrong told, I don't know if it was Morley Safer or the other guy on 60 Minutes, I don't deserve it. Remember that interview? He goes, I don't deserve it. He was telling the truth. He was telling him the truth that he doesn't deserve it because he never walked on the moon. You know, they're all completely deceptive and fraudulent. And they've been milking billions of dollars from us taxpayers since 1958. So talk about extortion, a scam. That's NASA. So, and I had a collection of the moonwalkers. We never went to the moon, but I had all of their signatures and their autographs. And I was very proud of that, like you were when you were a kid and you hung all those pictures up on your wall that your dad gave you. It was very, very similar. I felt proud to have all these signatures. But when I woke up, I sold them, every single one of them. And I had everybody. I had like over 100 astronauts from Group 1, Group 2, Group 3. And I remember in particular the one with Buzz Aldrin Jr. He wrote me a personal letter using my Beverly Hills address at the time. And it was a letter to me with the letter and a picture in a blue mat and a gold frame. And I took that frame and I went to the pawn shop in Las Vegas, you know, Pawn Stars. And the late Rick Harrison Sr., the father, okay, not Rick Harrison Jr., the bald head, his father, okay, he's not alive anymore, but he bought it from me. And I don't know how much he gave me, $2 or $3 grand. I don't remember, but you could verify that. Anyone can verify that just by looking at the time period, going back, and you can verify that. Now, why did I sell him that? I sold it, and he bought it, so he doesn't realize that we never went to the moon, obviously, because he wouldn't have bought it. But I had to get rid of it because it's not true. You know, it's a fake. It's like, I don't know, I can't explain it. So, but I have one regret with my collection that I sold, and I sold through eBay. Ira Goldberg is a very, very, very big auctioneer in Beverly Hills. And I sold him a lot of my collection, to his auction company. But basically, I got rid of everything, and I got rid of Chuck Yeager. Now, I had a signed photograph of Chuck Yeager kneeling down with the background of an SR-71, which is a Blackbird. And he was kneeling down, looking right at the camera. And it was a beautiful, glossy picture. And he just sent it to me. You know, I must have been a kid. But he was a little older, and I sold that too. So I feel bad about that because out of everything that I sold, that was the most legitimate person, you know, and I don't blame the astronauts. You know, they're just doing their job. You know, they have their pensions at stake. You know, they don't want their family members killed. You know, they're acting, they're playing a role. So I don't blame them. But obviously I blame, you know, the administrators who knew the truth. You know, the few people that did know, I blame all of them because they're perpetuating a total fraud. So, and the fact that I didn't come out with this earlier, like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, went to the Times or the press or what, because I really didn't think that it was news. And now, since he told a little girl who was 8 at the time that he didn't want to lie to her, if you remember that interview.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
The word's out. You know, people are waking up. People are realizing that the whole moon, the whole NASA thing is a complete farce. It's a fraud. And I don't know when they're going to be punished for it. if they ever will be. But I hope that the truth comes out and it becomes common knowledge. That's my story when I was 22 years old, meeting my hero, who was a total fraud. But and shout out to you for exposing the truth, many years ago, because it took a lot of courage to do that, especially when you did Astronauts Gone Wild. I mean, it's so evident. Gene Cernan sweating under the armpits, and his body language, and and then Alan Bean saying batteries. Yeah, batteries is what kept everything going. I mean, it's full of shit. But I mean, you expose all of that, and you're going to be known for that forever. That's going to be your legacy that you're going to leave our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren forever. So I think it's a wonderful thing what you did, and you're like a hero of mine because of that.
Well, I appreciate that. I have a few questions listening to your story. So you got there first, I gather, because you were a worker there. About what time did he show up in the evening, or was he one of the first guests there, or what?
When I walked into the double doors, Joan had double doors. When I walked in, he was right there. And Joan, may she rest in peace, was actually introducing Buzz to some of her friends that were, hanging around, eating hors d'oeuvres and doing all kinds of stuff. So that's what I got, because I came early and he was actually there when I walked in.
Okay,
And
so you
I
were
knew
there.
he was.
You were there to work the party, but it sounded like there was some sort of pre-party already going on.
Yes, yeah. It was like people getting to know each other before the party starts, and
Oh,
it was a
wow.
slow fill up of people coming in.
How
It
many
was
people
packed.
were there all together when it was packed?
Oh God, that's
A
hard to
lot.
say. A lot of people. There were a
About
lot of
100 people.
there were a lot of celebrities there, but the only guy I cared about was him.
Hmm.
There were many celebrities. I could care less. I had blinders on. I was focused on him.
You
Remember, I was
remember what the
22 years old.
do you remember what the occasion for the party was?
Christmas party. It
Oh,
was a
okay.
Christmas party or a holiday party.
Right. And it was in Hollywood with a bunch of celebrities at Joan Rivers' house.
No, it was in Bel Air
Oh, Bel Air.
at Joan
But
Rivers' house.
but Hollywood types, basically.
Yeah. Celebrities, big time. Yeah,
Right.
all
Now,
celebrities.
so Buzz was one of the first people there.
He was the first person I saw.
Right, but he was in the first percentage of people who were there at the party. He arrived pretty early.
Yeah, he was there before me. When I
Right.
walked in,
And you were
he
there to
was
work the party. So
I was there to work.
and then was he one of the last guests to leave, or did everyone leave at about the same time, or what?
It started getting less and less crowded toward the end of the night. Now you can't I can't quote a time because this was 40 years ago, 1985. So how long ago was that? 30 years ago? 40 years ago? 40 years ago.
Yeah, almost.
Almost. Yeah. So I don't know the time, but I do know that I was determined to get closer to him. Besides have you talked to Wayne lately? It had to be more than that, because that was the highlight of my night, of my life, actually, seeing him. Because I did not know about the fraud when I was 22. I didn't know until 2014, 2015. So
when you showed up at the party, was he already drinking alcohol?
yes, he had a drink in his
Probably.
hand.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you do, right?
He
What
was hammered, and I was serving him drinks all night.
So when you showed up, he was already hammered.
Getting there.
Getting there, I see. And what was he drinking other than champagne? Was it champagne all night, or did he have a favorite drink?
Oh God, I don't know. It was
Okay.
I
You
was
were
serving
serving him.
champagne.
So
I was
he
serving
got
champagne.
hammered mainly off of champagne or mixed drinks or a bunch of stuff. I mean,
No, I didn't. I mean, as much as I would like to have kept my eye on him all night, I was there working, so I
yeah.
didn't.
So they had other drinks other than champagne, whiskey,
There
and
was a
what?
bar. There was a
Yeah,
full bar,
right.
and but when I saw him, he had a drink in his hand, and I had a platter, a silver platter with the tuxedo, and I was walking by everybody, and everyone was taking drinks, but I made sure that he took mine. because remember, I broke the ice with him earlier.
What other celebrities were there that you remember, if any?
Just Joan,
Just,
Edgar, and
just,
Melissa. Melissa was a cute little thing. She must have been 14. She was really cute. Nice
but there
Jewish
were
girl.
other celebrities there. You just don't remember.
It was packed with celebrities. I just don't
What would
remember.
you get? What would you guess by the time he said we didn't go? How many drinks do you think that he had by that point?
Well, it was at the end of the night.
Mm.
And when he said it was a very, very soft spoken voice. In other words, it's almost as if he didn't want anybody to hear. It was very soft spoken, but he leaned over to me. We got close. I mean, we got shoulder to shoulder, tuxedo to tuxedo. And he leaned over and he says, now I don't know if he said, we never went there or we never went there. I tried to remember it in my head over the years. The gist of it is he basically said we never went to the moon. He didn't say to the moon, but he said we never went there.
Yeah, well,
Kind of like
obviously,
what he told the little
talking
girl.
about. Yeah.
Kind of like what he told the little girl.
Well, you being, I guess, a Hollywood film buff person, you probably remember the film The In-Laws, right?
I think so.
Okay, so The In-Laws is with Peter Falk and Alan Arkin. I think it came
Oh
out in
yeah, yeah.
1978. Arthur Hiller, I think, directed it.
Yes.
And he's basically a CIA agent. Peter Falk is, but no one knows it. His wife doesn't know it. His son doesn't know it. The Alan Arkin character at that time, he doesn't know it. Nobody knows the guy's a CIA agent. And so Alan Arkin is off running an errand for Peter Falk, the character. He's sitting at a bar having a cup of coffee, and he's sitting there with the cab driver who's taking him from this point to that point to that point. And while he's waiting for Alan Arkin to come back in the story, he's sitting there with the cab driver. And the cab driver's like, well, what do you do for a living? And he says, I work for the CIA. So I find that interesting because, his wife in the story didn't know he was a CIA agent. His son didn't know. Alan Arkin didn't know at that time. But he tells a cab driver, who's a servant, right? A common average person, if you don't mind my saying. And here you are, the servant at the party. And out of all the people, he probably never told his wife they didn't go for her own security. Never told his kids because they would never speak to him again, maybe. But he tells the waiter at the party.
Yes, that's what I was, a waiter.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's so typical in life, for that to happen. And that's why they kind of wrote that same scenario in The In-Laws. That's just
Interesting analogy.
what some people do. I don't know if I want to use the word crazy people do, but maybe eccentric might be. You could definitely say Buzz Aldrin is eccentric, and the character Peter Falk played was eccentric, intelligent and coherent people, and yet he confides in the cab driver that he's a CIA agent, and he confides in you, the waiter, that he never went to the moon. And another thing I want to mention is, I've received truth serum before. If you go to, I'm sure you've read
Yes,
my book, Moon Man.
I have.
And so I told them anything and everything they wanted to know. And I only remember it was so strong a drug like LSD, I'm throwing up. I remember the first question or two, and I don't even remember the rest, just a blur. But I'm sure I told them everything they wanted to know. And so I always thought, I'm sure you've heard it said in circles before, that alcohol is truth serum, and it's pretty darn close. I mean, when I in the past drank and got intoxicated, I would just, speak my mind about whatever, inappropriately a lot of times as well. So we need to note that alcohol is very much truth serum. And I would guess, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I were to guess based on your description of Hammered, based on the amount of time he was there, based on him having drank alcohol before you got there, I would guess he may have had up to 12 drinks, alcoholic beverages, and strong ones, not beer, by the time he told you what he told you. I mean, that is very hammered. You're in la la land. You're able to walk and move and see things, though maybe blurry. But you're almost like sleepwalking. And so it doesn't surprise me that he tells a fan who's the waiter when he's drunk on truth serum, that we didn't go. And I find that fascinating. He hasn't told anybody except the little girl. And do you think that was by accident, or did he intentionally confide in her?
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
Oh, the girl.
Yeah.
Oh, when I saw that interview with the girl, he did not want to lie to her. No way. He was not going to lie to her. He told her the truth.
Interesting.
And I know that Neil, the late Neil Armstrong, told his grandchildren the truth. That he never went. He didn't want them to know, to be lied to as well. So I do know
Now,
that.
what makes you think that Neil Armstrong told his grandchildren?
Well, I know the way that I learn on different channels and also in life is that I try to get a credible source. And if the credible source gives me information, I say, oh, okay. But then when two other people that are credible also give the same information, now that becomes vetted for me. I don't know how you do it or other people do it. And by the way, these sources are not just off the street. They're credible. They're educated. They're credible. They have put in their time, and they're truth seekers. They're known for telling the truth. So that came from that. So it obviously it wasn't. And by the way, I had Neil Armstrong autograph on a photograph, his signature, which was worth thousands of dollars at the time. And I had several of those. One I requested by mail, like many, 20 years, 30 years ago. And he sent it to me. But I just think because Neil was, he wouldn't put his hand on the Bible when you approached him. He wouldn't accept the $5,000 cash that you had for him right then and there. He could have easily taken it. He wanted no part of it, because he was a religious man, and he did not want to lie. That's why he didn't do interviews. He didn't do a lot of interviews, and that's why he couldn't lie to the 60 Minutes. When he was telling him, I don't deserve it, he was actually telling the truth. I really don't deserve it because I never went. But he didn't say that. He just said, I don't deserve it. And he was telling the truth.
You were implying that you had a couple of different sources. Maybe that'll trigger the thought about why you specifically believe he told his grandchildren.
I had a couple of different sources vet that information, so it is true.
Oh, so basically two different sources kind of confirmed that.
Great.
That may be the case. It's something, there's a special bond between grandparent and grandchildren. It's different than child. There's the saying, I'm sure you've heard it, familiarity breeds contempt. But grandchildren is different. Grandchildren are the future. Grandchildren are going to be there for history, maybe there for when the truth comes out. You know what I mean? And rather than them finding out that your grandfather was a liar, right? He's going to supersede that and let them know for this, for intimacy, relationship, historical record first. Another thought that came to mind when you were talking about you couldn't own the memorabilia because it just was in your mind spiritually tainted. And I can definitely understand that. One of the reasons that Buzz Aldrin or anyone else of his nature could get in trouble is he's, sold paper clips or coins that he claims was in his pocket inside the lunar module or on the lunar surface. And it seems like every few years he discovers a new one. You know what I mean? Just make sure those paper clips were manufactured in 1969 or before, Buzz. Don't want to get into trouble. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, he could eventually get into legal trouble based on that if the truth came out. I always thought, tell me what you think about this, Alan. I always thought that if the truth came out, moon landing memorabilia could actually go up in price. I mean,
Possible.
if you have a 50-cent piece, I mean, a 50-cent piece from 1975 that has the moon landing lunar module on the back, I don't know how much that is worth, $5 or $10 at the most now, because there's so many of them.
Mhm.
But if it came out that that was fake, I think the value would go up. You know?
Possible. It's like it reminds me of like a fake Krugerrand. Sometimes the fake Krugerrand can be worth more than, a numismatic coin, with gold being $2,000 an ounce.
Mm.
It could be worth more because it's fake. So yeah, I have heard that before as well.
So, what else would you like to say before we conclude about your encounter with him, about the moon landing fraud in general?
I think more and more people are waking up to the fraud. So it's sad. It's sad that they're getting away with it to this day. Congress is giving them money every month. God knows how many tens of, hundreds of millions of dollars a month that they're getting. And it's sad, it's sad. I wish they would just come out with it. It needs to be dissolved, but it's not going to be. And NASA is controlling SpaceX, by the way.
It makes me
NASA
think
controls SpaceX.
makes me think of Kennedy's secret society speech that he did shortly before he died, that there really shouldn't be that many secrets. There's nothing wrong with wanting to protect a military technology that you
Right.
might have to use in war,
Right.
But what's mostly 90% of what's secret now are them covering up their crimes.
Right. You had mentioned Kennedy, so I'm just going to say real quick about the Kennedy assassination. It was definitely a murder. Lyndon Baines Johnson ordered the hit on John F. Kennedy. And Lee Harvey Oswald never fired a shot. He was a patsy. The bullet that made the fatal blow to Kennedy was made by James Files. He's deceased now, but he's the one that delivered the fatal blow to John F. Kennedy, and it was behind the fence, the gate, whatever you call it. So that's a fact. You don't have to believe me. Just do your own. When you do your own research, the truth. You know what's great about the truth? The more truth you seek, the more it finds you. And when you seek the truth, and you're trying to vet journalists, when a journalist, underground journalist, tries to tell you something that isn't true, you just bat it away. And the truth, it's like a magnet. It comes right to you every time. So.
Well, thank you, Alan, for your testimony. And just tell us one more time, give us a repeat of what it is, so we don't have to rewind. Tell us what happened one more time at the party before we go.
Buzz Aldrin, toward the end of the party, I approached him. He approached me. We got close. In a very, very soft-spoken voice, he said, "We never went there." And he was implying we never went to the moon. But to me, it didn't matter because it went right over my head. I was so naive at the time. I didn't get it. It didn't dawn on me, as I mentioned earlier, until much, much later. But the minute I found out that he was telling the truth and that NASA's a fraud and the moon landings were faked and all the missions were faked. So that's what happened. And I'm sharing this with you now. I never shared it before to anybody. I never profited, never made any money, compensation, never even told anybody. The truth is very, very, very important. So the more the truth gets out there, the more the world is going to wake up. And that's a beautiful thing.
Amen. Well, thank you, brother. Good to talk to you, and God bless.
God bless. Thank you.
And there you have it, the special confession of Buzz Aldrin hammered at a Hollywood party. Pretty interesting, isn't it? And I guess it's a good example, too, how we can have different points of view and yet still get along with one another. Like I said, many of my friends are flat earthers. I just don't see it that way. And fortunately, for eternal life aficionados, I guess you could say, it won't matter whether we get that correctly. You know, there are many things theologically in the Bible that some people, I believe, get wrong, and I may be there myself, but I don't think God is going to be that exacting. God is a God full of grace and love, and we should do the same with each other. So until next week, buckle up, stay buckled up, stay prepared for another episode coming soon of Box Escape. Take care.